Yeah. Okay, cool. Good to go.
Yeah.
We usually start off with a clap so we can sync the cameras. So I'll do one, then you can do one, and then... Perfect. Welcome back to Unsigned Berlin. This is season 2, episode 20, so the final episode of this season. I'm here today with Jamila partially separate artists as well, Jamila and the Other Heroes. And we're just going to start off with a little snippet of...
Ja, Aini.
Yaini. Sorry about the pronunciation.
Oh, good.
So you were born and raised in Berlin, right? Where you have a lot of influence yourself from Palestine and from the other band members from all over the world. And you have this really nice quote in your Spotify bio that says, as people with family backgrounds from Syria, Palestine, Italy, Colombia, we travel and create home within our music, which I thought was really beautiful. Is there something from Berlin culture or German culture where you are really, really proud of it and really try to bring it into the music to create that feeling?
I think German culture, I somehow can't identify with that.
Right.
And I think Berlin is really something else. And I think all what Berlin is to us, we bring into the music. I mean, just the fact that we come from so many different backgrounds, from so many different subcultures, and yet like we come together in Berlin. We have a really beautiful rehearsal space, Artistania. It's a very important space in Neukölln with lots of studios, and there's also a live stage and big sculptures and like interdisciplinary artists. And I think to be able to create in such a space and to bring all the different experiences you had before and bring it together. So I think this is very Berlin for me.
It's so like the combination of the different things is what makes it the one. Yeah,
and at the same time, I think really this search for freedom and liberty and to be really free in what you want to do, how you want to work, how you want to love, how you want to do political speech whatsoever, like to create freely, to really experiment freely and under less pressure of what's wanted, what's needed, you know.
Do you have any do you feel like it affects you when you're doing songwriting or any other members of the band, the political messages that are in the music, and if you're concerned about censorship or about being able to perform when you're back home in whichever country, is that something you think about while songwriting? Do you feel like it holds you back in any way or powers you going forward and you're like, I really want to get over this?
Yeah. Actually, there's something holding me back a bit in Germany.
Right.
Because I would unfortunately say we have a tendency of growing anti-Palestinian racism.
Yeah.
For instance, I was invited to a radio show, German national radio show, 2 years ago, and I was invited with a song that is also on the new album, Yaba. Yaba is Arabic and means "Oh Dad," and it's me talking to my father who became a refugee after the Six-Day War in 1967. He had to leave his home in Palestine as a 15-year-old. And basically in that song, I'm talking to him about what was it before, what do you remember, what it is for me today, who has been there since I'm 18 a lot, working in different cultural projects. And then what I wish for the region to be, right? Like a place where no passports, no names, no borders have to be applicable. And I was invited to speak about Palestinian diaspora narratives in my music, and they wanted to play the song as part of a showcase format. And then the moderator decided to throw overboard all the questions the editor had given me 2 weeks before and have a very superficial conversation with me generally about kitschy Arabic music and Syria. Right. And I've never been to Syria. Yes, like one bandmate is from Syria, but he was not invited to the show. And she tried everything to not speak with me about Palestine. She didn't even use the word.
Right.
And in the end, I asked her what happened. Like, I got all these questions to speak about Palestinian music, what it means to have a Palestinian identity in Germany, what I wish for the region and stuff. And she just said, I have the liberty to ask whatever I want.
Yeah, and you're like, well, technically you do, but...
Yeah, so that was basically a way of silencing. And this is just one specific example. I have lots of friends with a Palestinian background, and they're trying to protest or just to speak about it and to research about it, to be creative about it. And they find so much barriers in Germany. And that's actually what's a bit frightening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel that coming from? Do you feel that affecting other band members coming from other places as well, where they feel like their narrative and their not narrative, but their story is not one that's acceptably told here or back home or anything like that?
Actually, we had the situation at Carnaval der Kulturen we played this summer, and I made an announcement about like Salam, who's from Syria, our percussionist, Salam Al-Hassan. He brought a song into the band that is actually a traditional, but we made our own kind of version of it. And he's singing a mawal in the song. And that mawal is a long Arabic kind of singing improvisation.
Right.
And it's referring to a poem where it says, like, we don't want the dictators who ruined our paradise, in his case Syria, to get into paradise when they die. They don't deserve it because they destroyed the paradise that is here and now.
Right.
And it's a very like emotional song, and many people who fled from Syria who are in the audience, they always love it and they're really touched, and it's a very important song for the community. So after announcing the song, or in the end of the song, I was saying like free Syria, you know. And then there was a guy who was running on stage, like after that moderation I always leave the stage, there's an instrumental song, and he took my mic and he said like, no, we are for Bashar al-Assad, and he was super crazy. And then he went to a security man and said like, they're not allowed to say that, and I'm here from the Assad regime. It was super awkward, but that's the only time something like that happened, you know. But I think we all feel quite liberal of what we do and what our music is about, and it's definitely political.
It's also, it's one of the sort of benefits of a musical, well, Berlin being such an international community, and also music where it's by definition lots of people trying to express their own situation. Do you see things in the music, especially in the music industry here, happening regularly that reinforce the skewed numbers of just people we have in the industry, especially women, especially in production where it's just such a small minority? Are there things you think that you see regularly that reinforce that, but maybe people don't realize are doing that?
Reinforce like the disbalance of hierarchies?
Yeah.
Oof. That's a big one. I mean, there is an imbalance, and I like to look at where things already go well, like in the sense of like, I mean, in Berlin we have the music board that really like only funds projects and really looks for gender equality and also diversity and many other aspects and intersectionalities. I like festivals where it's not regularly the male booker, you know, or the only male booking team or the only white male booking team inviting us to play. And in the production, it's definitely a very little number, but I love that there's like small springs. Like, for example, I don't know if you know the Femergy collective.
I don't.
It's based around different artists from Switzerland and Germany, all female artists who decided like, we want to work together in sisterhood, and they created their own collective. They produce music, they songwrite, they sometimes, one is the lead artist and the others are backing that artist, and really to show like there's a lot of competences. And it doesn't have to be male musicians or producers. I myself worked with a really amazing producer called Naima Husseini during COVID, when playing with a band was not that easy. So we actually did an experiment. We went to Portugal, we songwrite together, we recorded things and produced it in a very new manner, you know. But I think if you look at the numbers, it's still very, very unequal. Yeah. And I mean, if I look at myself, I became a singer. Okay, great. I mean, I think I became a singer because I'm a storyteller and I really want to tell stories through music. But I also learned drums and guitar and piano, and I could have taken many other directions. But I think my first way of what really influenced me as a child was like the front person, the singer. And that was the only thing that often also women were, you know. Whereas in the bands, you barely see an instrumentalist. I studied in London music. It was really interesting because I think I was in a very international school, and it was the first time I saw lots of instrumentalists that were female, and most of them coming from Latin America. And I saw like, oh yeah, it's much more usual to be a bassist or like a drummer or whatever, you know, as a woman, and really strive to make that your main career, you know, not just as a side thing. Yeah.
With that project you were doing just during COVID with the producer,
Naima,
with
yeah.
Naima, the last album with As Jamila and the Other Heroes was just when COVID was happening and you couldn't tour because of that.
Yeah.
Are there any kind of experiences, maybe doing that project in Portugal as well, that you wouldn't have had without COVID, but now you feel have become a part of what you want to do within music?
Mm-hmm. I think it was more the process of how to songwrite, because I used to do it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I really like the collective process of people bringing in ideas and then you co-create and something emerges that is a collective, creative thing. Yeah. And with Naima, I felt really free in songwriting together, both in the musical compositional part as well as lyrics, to have a sparring partner to actually ping pong that. So that's why I also invited her on our new album to be like this kind of creative sparring partner and mirror. And she was kind of in that producer or critical producing ears role. Yeah. And I want to do that more often. I really like that. And also because she's a woman. I mean, in the end, my bandmates are all male, and it's really... it's a different energy around to also have a woman in the studio. And I also invited some friends, female friends, to be part of the album. And I think, this energy brings some other some other sides out in me. Yeah.
Was that songwriting in English and Arabic? Or is there... I think it's sort of well known that Arabic as a language is very old and has a lot of meaning tied into the words, and English maybe not so much. Do you struggle with that at all in terms of, I really want to express this idea in English, but it just doesn't have this emotion that I know how I can do in Arabic, but it's like you struggle to get over that using English?
I don't struggle, because for me, first of all, Arabic is my second language. Like, I kind of grew up with it, but also not like a first language, because I was growing up in a very, German-wide surrounding. So for me, I'm still discovering the Arabic language. I'm learning every day new like idioms or phrases or like several other meanings, So for me, it's actually a gift, like a cherry on the top, that I more and more can also express myself in Arabic. And it gives me, even my voice sounds different when I sing in Arabic.
Right.
And most of the songs of the new album are both English and Arabic, because like this is also who I am right now. Like I work very internationally. I speak with lots of people in English. I studied in the UK, so that's a really big part of expressing myself. Yeah. But then, there's this other part that's growing and giving me another space.
Yeah. You also have all the song titles in both languages.
Which was a fight.
Oh, okay.
So Spotify actually, like, before it was okay. And then this year they decided you can only have a title in one language. And then they translate it automatically. Oh. And then I started really a fight with my publisher and the distribution company. They backed me up because I said, this is not just the translations. The Arabic parts in my song titles refer to the Arabic lyrics. They're something completely different. Oh, right. They're not just the translation. And then I was really saying to them, like, I'm part of this diasporic community in Europe, in the so-called West. And this is our reality, that we have these different languages. And it's really important that that's visible and not hidden. Yeah, and then in the end they did it.
Nice. Do you know why they changed that?
No.
Language? Did you do that as sort of like, this song has different languages, I want to express these different parts of the song and these different emotions? Or was it more like, I want to make this accessible to other people who speak this language also?
First of all is the first thing. Like, first of all, it's really about what story do I want to tell and why does it come poetically in which language to me? But then also I think it's really important. Yes, a part of our target community is Arabic speaking. Yeah. And I want our stories to be visible, not only audible, but also like to see it. Yeah.
And with the other influences from all the other countries, with all the bandmates, is there any interest in exploring more of Spanish language storytelling or that kind of thing with the other bandmates providing songwriting, even if they're not doing vocals?
Not really, but it happens in the music. Like, for example, Leon, who's married to a Colombian and has been spending a lot of time over there. And who's generally also as a DJ very interested in Latin American music and Afro-Latin sounds and rhythms and melody schemes. You hear a lot in the way of his guitar playing that is influenced from that.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you feel like there's been a movement since the last album to this one, moving more in the direction of, say, Latin music, or more into the like Afrobeat hip hop type of inspiration coming from the drummer?
A little bit.
Do you feel one direction moving more than the other?
No, because I think like we're very like emotionally and improvisationally driven people. You know, we wrote the album going to a house in North Germany for a week.
Nice.
And everyone just bringing their ideas, and then we made a baby out of it, basically. And there was no such thing as like, okay, we have a concept or this is what we are aiming for. It was very naturally and
Were you doing jam sessions for that, where someone would be like, here's an idea, let's just leave it like looping and we'll jam? Was that?
And we recorded that. And actually we did an acid trip together on, I think, one of the last days. And that was really epic because like we were all like wandering around and having time together or on our own. Yeah. And then I remember this village is near to a river, and we were standing on that river and there were a lot of sheep. And we were singing the new melodies to the sheep, seeing how they react to that. And then at some point, they were like, the guys were going back to the house, sitting in the garden, making a fire. And I was still staying at the river and watching the sunset and just humming melodies. And it was like the song you chose to play first, Ya Aini. It actually happened there. It kind of came through me on that trip. And then I went back to the house without actually talking to the others, just went up straight to the session room and started singing and playing the crack hips to it. And then one by one joined. Like first Pierre came up, the drummer, and started playing this groove to it. And then Fema came experimenting a bit on the piano and then taking the bass. And then Leon came and put in this really amazing psychedelic sounds to it. And we jammed on it for maybe an hour. And it felt so like mystical and ancestral. And we really felt as if our ancestors are coming to speak through us, you know. Yeah. And this is, for example, how that song was born.
Is that house also where the name for Bazaar is that where that came from as well? Or what's the story behind the name, if there is one?
That's a good question.
It's a great name. As in, also for people who are listening and can't read it, it's bizarre as in strange, bazaar as in a place that's a bazaar. I don't know how to describe,
I think it came, I'm not sure anymore. It's like it's been there and it's clear it's there, but I think Fema had the idea, maybe, the bass player. He definitely dreamt of the riff of that song.
Right.
And I dreamt of the story I'm singing about. So we kind of, the title song of the album is kind of made of two dreams.
That's cool. With the sounds, with the album cover, a lot of it reminds me of Krungbin. Is that a big inspiration, or is there any other bands or albums that as a group you look to and you're like, this is something we all have in common and can reference as like, oh, this is, of course, we'll talk about this.
I think we all like that band, but it's not that we would sit down and say like, hey, we want to sound like this, or I think we once had a shared Spotify playlist. It was an idea, let's all put songs in, and then in the end actually just Fema and I did. So no, I don't know, we have so many different influences, but what is more than certain bands we really appreciate is, I think, a shared past of being teenagers and playing rock music.
Right.
We all share that. And this is something, I think, in German we say der rote Faden, that's the red wool that goes through all our music.
Okay.
I mean, you know, like each song in a way has like so many different musical languages, but they all have this kind of powerful rock kind of energy. And I think this is where we hold it together in a way. Yeah.
Do you remember for you what the first rock album was where you kind of discovered the genre, where you were like, oh, this is something that's different?
Oh my God. Actually, I started listening to hip hop first.
Okay.
And then I remember I was 11 years old or 12. And I went to the supermarket with my mom, and they always had like a little shelf for CDs. And I discovered Last Resort by Papa Roach.
I don't think I know it.
It's a very like almost heavy metal-y kind of very angry song. And oh my God, I think I listened to it sometimes like 10 times a day when I was like in my teenage anger, you know. And funnily, we also had like, I was born in Berlin, but we moved when I was a child to a small town in Mecklenburg-Western Pomerania in the north. A really small town. But they had this rock club night. So every Saturday was, or no, I think once a month was rock night.
Right.
And this is like where from Nirvana to like Limp Bizkit or like all these things, like new music, but also old rock music. And I always went there. I don't know.
What was the sort of hip hop you were listening to before you found rock?
I think the first thing was a CD my Palestinian cousin created for me, like a sampler, because he studied in Florida.
Right.
And he brought all this like US old school hip hop, like Tupac and all these things. And I really loved that so much. And then at the same time, there was the so-called Hamburg School of German rap from Hamburg, also on like more slow, old school beats, lots of political messages. There was Stuttgart-based Freundeskreis.
Oh, no.
They had also very beautiful political albums, Esperanto and Quadratur des Kreises. So this was the kind of hip hop I really... I also made my own tapes. Like I remember I had this tape recorder and recorded things from the radio, and then
where you're like, this is happening now. Like if I miss it, are there anything else where you make a song and then you kind of see those like lines going back to your childhood of music, where you're like, oh, okay, this feels new and this is very much me, but then there's still the little 11-year-old me listening to Last Resort.
I think I have it when I do spoken word parts that I remembered of me rapping when I was a teenager.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like rather this kind of things. Or when it's really like very rocky. I remember my first rock band, you know, or when I was 14, I started organizing a rock festival for teenagers in that town I grew up, and we were all about playing this kind of music, you know. So there definitely is some of this energy. Yeah.
For organizing stuff like that, and now you're doing a lot of the behind the scenes stuff for the band, and being like, oh, you have to do the bookings and do all the social media and stuff like that. Is there do you feel like there's pressure on the art to look and feel a certain way so that you can adapt it to that at all, especially social media? Do you feel that really affecting your songwriting process, or do you try to put it behind you?
No, it doesn't affect the songwriting process. It's just something I feel is like another burden. Yeah. I mean, of course, there's also liberty in it. Yeah. Like you're doing your own press and communication in a way. Yeah. You're the storyteller. But I feel there's so much feeling of competition around that. Like who has how many followers and likes and... I think it's fundamentally unhealthy, you know? Yeah. And at the same time, I don't know, our manager said like, and you have to have a TikTok account now. Then I was like, no, no, I'm good. Like I'm doing Instagram. Yeah. Facebook is outdated anyway. But I don't want to jump on every new kind of stream just to please the neoliberal idea of how you have to present yourself, you know? Yeah, yeah. Do you feel a difference in different places where you record, if you're recording in Portugal or if you have an opportunity to go to Palestine and record there? Do you feel a difference in the attitudes to that kind of thing? I think it's more what is the studio situation like? Right. Because in Portugal, we actually took the mic you have here and just very simple recording setup and not many instruments. And we experimented a lot also with like knocking on different things like tables and walls and like really much more experimental. And then, I think it's really a good question of like, what's the energy of a studio? And that studio could be in Berlin or in Cairo or somewhere else. We actually wanted to record in Egypt. That was like a dream. But it also felt like, it needs a lot of money because we were touring in Egypt and we really loved it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the thing for the next album, to record somewhere else. But I personally, I like being home and having like my kind of safety surrounding and not being rushed. Like, okay, if that day doesn't go well, then I can do it another day. You know, like not being forced like to have everything done in a very certain amount of time. I think for instrumentalists it's maybe different, but as a singer you never know how your physical and mental constitution is to sing the way you want it to sound. So I like to not stress myself with that.
And for writing as well, when you're relying on creativity. Though maybe that's something that comes with time, and like because right now it's like you prefer to be home. It sounds like you prefer to be home because of the unknowns of recording an album, and maybe when you've done enough of those, and it's like the album's the known, we can add a different unknown, and that's recording somewhere. Are there any other places where the music scene or just the culture and everything that surrounds you when you're there is really exciting, and you want to go record like that?
Definitely. I mean, I would love to record like maybe in Jordan, Palestine. I have a friend who has a farm near the Dead Sea in Jordan where he records.
Nice.
So I think the next time I'm there, I want to visit it and feel the vibe. Yeah.
Is that more because of the nature that's there, or the culture and the music that surrounds you?
Both. Yeah. But I think being out of city could be really interesting.
Yeah. Well, I guess you did that with this one too, right?
No, actually, this album this was just the songwriting phase, but the recording we did here in Berlin at the famous Goldwatch studio.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that was really sweet. And I recorded my vocals and strings and piano in another studio in Neukölln. But yeah, I'm wondering how would it be to be in a very beautiful place where you actually also live somewhere in nature and have a studio there.
The dream,
right? Like this is something I would like to experience, and not having to drive an hour through hectic, stressful Berlin to arrive at a studio, and then to really zoom out and really just not do anything else but be in that universe of recording. I think that could be really nice.
Yeah, and when you take a break from it, it's not like, oh, let's
swim or
you can go do something actually like a real break instead of like let's go walk in the park where there's a bunch of people and it's still a city. And it's still, are there this is a little bit separate, but just thinking of the social media and having to do with all of that, are there parts of your personality or interests you have that you wish you could communicate, or there's like, I'm really into this thing, I'm really into sports or visual art or film or whatever, that you are really excited about but feel like you can't talk about it because you have to brand yourself in a certain way?
I just noticed that I don't share things. Like, for example, now I was a week in a very beautiful mountain area in Spain. And I think some years ago, when I was still using Facebook, I would have posted that there, you know?
Right.
But now I feel like I don't want to use that anymore, but I also don't want to post it on the band account because it has not really something to do with it, you know? But I don't feel like I need that, or there's an urge to do so.
Where were you? Where in Spain were you?
There's an area called Sierra de Tramontana. It's at the west coast of Mallorca. And it's old, beautiful villages and really high mountains, very green, very like rocky cliffs, coasts.
Sounds
very beautiful.
Sounds beautiful. I feel like you're very, at least you've mentioned lots of places that are very kind of outside of the city. Are there reasons that you've chosen to stay in Berlin and live here and work here?
Oh, good question. I'm thinking a lot about why do I live here still? I mean, of course, Berlin is my biggest network. Like most of my friends live here. The access to everything around creating music is here. But I kind of have that fantasy to live somewhere more in nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm partly trying to do that by spending winters in the Arab world.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's usually also time we don't really tour that much, or we tour there.
Right.
And to try to have that contrast a bit.
Mm-hmm. Are there aspects of Arabic culture that haven't really reached here that you wish they would, if it's music or community or something like that?
Mm-hmm. I mean, first of all, I don't think there's the Arab culture, no, because
No,
there's so
but there's
many
also not
different.
the German culture.
Yeah,
There's
exactly.
like it's such a small
Exactly.
thing, but
No,
from
but
your
just
experience,
to highlight that, because
yeah.
I think definitely an aspect of community and ways of, how to say that. I think there is something that can be very. I'm thinking of my Arabic family, my Palestinian family. There is, I think, lots of people in my friend circles who have also that background. They feel a lot of stress of having to fulfill certain like expectations of the family, the society, the community. But at the same time, there's a much warmer connection and how to say, like a clear sense of we're our community and we're here for each other. And if you're in need or somebody dies or someone is sick or whatever, we're here.
Yeah.
And also, much more shared time, like social quality time.
Yeah, that's a big thing I've from lots of friends and my girlfriend as well, who comes from Latin America, where she's like, to meet up with people here, you have to schedule it 2 weeks in advance.
Exactly.
Like, how are you having social occasions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for like, I spend a lot of time since I'm a baby at my at a certain uncle and aunt, and they always have a full house. Every dinner or lunch, there's like at least 10, if not 20 or 30. Like there's this, and it's clear in this space at every, let's say, Friday, the whole family comes, and they're together, not with certain aim. They're just together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see that at all with? Am I right in thinking one of your parents was from East Berlin?
Yeah, my mom.
Yeah. Was there a sense of community, you think, through the culture of East Berlin at that time that's similar?
I think a lot. I mean, you can find a lot of criticism about the GDR for sure. Yeah. But what my parents always told me, like, they felt really, I mean, where to start? I mean, first of all, both of my parents, I think they would not have studied if it wasn't for the social system and the GDR. Like my mom came from a really poor family and was the first to study. And my dad, as a Palestinian refugee, also was able to study here.
So
and
just to check, he was a refugee from Palestine to then at the time the GDR?
Yeah.
Okay.
So they were both able to become doctors,
right.
Which probably in another economic system, the chances would have been much less, right? Yeah. And they always described to me that they felt really safe. Like, I mean, they knew, okay, there's Stasi and you have to be careful and some things like you have to think who you tell what. But nevertheless, they kind of felt really safe and they knew they share a certain idea of justice, also like of political justice for the whole globe, for all the oppressed people. Is it oppression through a political system or because of other discrimination forms? Like, I think there was a shared kind of trust to have each other's backs in a way. And the day the wall came down, which was the day I was born, for them was a really hard day. Like, on the one hand, they were happy now they have a daughter and they can travel freely. Yeah. And my parents actually, for really long, were not allowed to marry. Like, in the end, my mom was pregnant and they still weren't allowed to marry. And she wrote a letter to Erich Honecker every week. And then they got a call on a Wednesday, you're allowed to marry on Friday. And she was pregnant in the 8th month. So that was like actually a month before the fall of the wall.
Can I ask why they weren't allowed to marry?
Because my dad was a foreigner.
Oh, okay, right.
And they were afraid that my mom then would move with him to Kuwait, where at that time, a big part of my Palestinian family was living in diaspora. Right. And they didn't want to lose GDR citizens. But anyway, so the day the wall came down, like, for them was clear this would change everything. I mean, of course, there's the freedom to travel and new opportunities, but that sense of community and, for example, also the support for the liberation of the Palestinian people will be gone, So it was also really hard.
Do you do your educational work in places aside from Germany as well?
I gave lots of workshops like in Egypt and Palestine and Jordan.
Do you feel like there's a big difference in what you're trying to teach there, where there is this community aspect of people that are more, the community is tighter versus here, where maybe the views are more like, it's pretty much everyone openly agrees that racism is bad and sexism is bad, but there's a lot of kind of like, it's more hidden in some way. Does that make sense?
Almost. I think what is different is that, especially in places like, let's say, Egypt, Palestine, Jordan, I put much more focus on empowerment work.
Okay.
So empowering artists who are affected by racism or other forms of discrimination to find their voice, to go for it, be it in songwriting or managing your own music, like persona and identity, to dare to go into the light, like, and to do that despite maybe, the families or the society systems that tells you like, no, you shouldn't do that. You should have a proper job, or like, in the end, I think it's all about freedom, like trying to find freedom through your art also. And of course, also I do this kind of empowerment workshops or coachings also in Germany, and especially for artists of color. I myself define myself as like white passing. So like I go through as white, but when it comes to people knowing my name or my story, like I can also be affected. So I mean, I'm aware of many different privileges and accesses. And yeah, I think in Germany, there's lots of people who are so afraid, just like they know, as you say, it's bad, but they're afraid to actually take action because they could do it wrong and then feel shame. There's a lot of that. So I try to encourage people to be mistake friendly, but to also own their mistakes and like take responsibility and to not freeze and not do anything, because we need courageous people, right? Like otherwise you freeze when something happens and the affected person is hurting and not getting support.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that. In my uni, they do a very good job of communicating lots of issues in the industry, where we regularly are shown lots of statistics on sort of representation and how people feel, but there's not a lot of information out there about what to actually do about it, especially with people like me, cishet white males who make up most of the music industry in Germany and Northern Europe, of what you can actually do about it.
I think it's all about sharing. Like when you're in a position of more privilege or power, you can ask yourself, what of my resources can I share? So let's say you are in a group, then you can think of, how do we do decision making? How can I share that with less privileged people, you know? How can I share resources? How can I support people also getting money, fundings, whatsoever? How can I, fight for if it's let's say a work environment? How can I fight for a person to step up and be in a decision making position? Like all of these things, I think it all comes down to power sharing. Yeah.
Which is, I guess, sort of, the root of the problem in the first place, right?
Yeah, and also asking people for their needs. I think there's also a lot of people I discover in my workshops or like in the kind of processes I consult that make themselves, like they think a lot about what they can do, and then they try to take action without actually having asked the affected people.
Right.
You know, and to really ask like, what do you need? How can I support you in that? Do you actually want support? First of all, right? Like, how should it look like? What's your competences you really want to engage in this festival or project or whatever? To avoid tokenism or like white saviorism.
It's a complicated issue to deal with. How did you get into doing that work?
I mean, I think, since growing up, I was confronted with racism and like in school, like racist speech against my family, my dad, me, racist ideas. Like I will never forget 9/11, for example. The day after, we had first class in the morning was history. And the history teacher said to, like, looking at me, for sure it was anyway a Palestinian terrorist.
Right, and you're
you
like,
know? Yeah, and like this kind of like, I think there's so many stigmata and like, I think I grew up feeling like an alien, and this kind of alienation led me trying to create spaces of community, like with that festival, for example. It was not just a rock festival, it was a rock festival against racism, for instance, right? And so I've always created cultural events around political topics. Like, for example, at Fusion Festival for a really long time, I co-created a space called the Arab Underground. So we were over 10 years inviting hundreds of artists from the Arab world, musicians, theater makers, activists, thinkers, and we created kind of a really diverse program so they can share their perspectives, their narratives, because it's theirs. It's not ours to tell in a way, I was getting into that work through actual cultural production of events, of festivals, but I also studied cultural sciences and I focused on cultural policy. And then someone once asked me, like, hey, in our state theater, we're looking for someone to do a workshop about anti-racism. Would you like to do it? And I was like, okay, I can try. And then it felt really good. That was 2018. And since then, I'm doing that work. And I'm actually not just giving single workshops. I'm working with institutions or collectives over 1-2 years to really support them, in their whole structures.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are there any stuff you're involved with or stuff that you're not at all? Any organizations that you mentioned, Femergy, that kind of thing, that you think are doing a really great job and you'd just like to kind of tell people about?
Yeah, I mean, I would say definitely Bildungslab with a star in the end. It's a collective of scientists of color in Berlin, or like they're based differently, but the collective is here. And now you ask me something. I would need some time to think about it.
It's okay, we have time.
But I actually just finished co-creating a poster on empowerment with a circle of diverse critical friends, which really is about what can I do if I'm an artist and I'm affected by racism, and what can I do to be a good ally. Yeah. Maybe I can share it with you. You can share it in your circles.
Yeah, we can do that. Definitely. Yeah. Well, we've done about 45 minutes. So is there anything else? The album is out.
Bazaar, Palestine, Wayne Anna.
I like it's the double language in the names is really cool to me. It's like, because I myself speak a couple of languages, and it's like, I don't know, it's nice to see that. And I mean, I know you don't like TikTok, but it's the first first thing on the on the internet I've seen that will ask you, like, which languages do you understand? You can choose them, and then it will give you stuff in that language.
Cool.
Like, finally,
okay, that's cool.
Yeah. No, it's just really cool that you did the dual language thing. So yes, the album's out. Any shows coming up? This will be out tomorrow, hopefully, if all goes well. Anything else you want to promote?
Yeah, we're playing in Vienna in the Showcase Festival by Vienna.
Nice.
On Thursday.
Cool.
I would really love to invite people who have listened to that podcast to check out some music videos of ours, because we put a lot of love and effort into them. One of them has won lots of prizes, called Border Syndrome, which actually is about racist border systems. And we managed to create a video with several like queer Palestinian Syrian dancers and performers from Berlin, telling a story of racism at a border and like the dream to overcome that. And then recently we released a video called Fragments of Palestine, remembering Giuliano Merhamis. And he was a Palestinian Jewish freedom cultural activist who ran a theater in Jenin in the north of the West Bank, and who was super inspiring. Like, he said things like, a weapon with no culture behind it only kills but never liberates. And with that theater work he did, he really tried to support people to liberate themselves from conservative parts of the society, from the occupation. And he was like, for me, probably one of the most inspiring people I was able to meet. And he was killed in 2011. And we made this track. We got like voice memos of his, and we created a song around it. And this video, together with one of his former students who had lots of footage from that theater time with him, So yeah, that video is really dear to my heart, and that's maybe something
Nice.
I'd like people to have a look at.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us.
Thank you. Thank you for having that space.
Anytime.